Admiral Jiho stood on the bridge of the UNS Endeavour staring at the viewport. Earth hung in the distance, a blue marble against the black of space. He had dreamed of this moment his entire life. Humanity's first deep space voyage beyond the solar system. The slip space drive hummed beneath his feet, ready to tear open a hole in reality and push them faster than light itself. "All systems green, Admiral," said Dr. Hana from her station. She was the brilliant mind behind the drive technology. 3 years of testing, countless failures, and finally success. "We're ready when you give the word." Jiho nodded slowly. He was about to make history. "Take us to slip space." Destination Alpha Centauri. The stars stretched and twisted. Reality bent around them. For 30 seconds, the universe turned inside out. Then they were back in normal space 4 light years from home. The crew cheered. They had done it. Humanity had finally broken free of its cradle, but they were not alone. "Contact," shouted Yuna from the communications station. "Unknown vessel, 200,000 kilometers off our port side." The celebration died instantly. Every eye turned to the main display. A ship appeared on screen unlike anything in human records. It was massive, easily 5 times the size of the Endeavour. Its hull was dark, covered in what looked like chitin or insect shell. Weapons bristled from every surface. "They're hailing us," Yuna said, her voice tight with tension. "Put it through," Jiho ordered. The screen flickered. A creature appeared that made several crew members gasp. It looked like a mantis the size of a human, with 4 arms and compound eyes that glittered with cold intelligence. When it spoke, the translator struggled to keep up. "Primitive vessel, you have entered space claimed by the Vortan Dominion. I am Commander Vrach. You will state your origin and purpose." Jiho stepped forward, straightening his uniform. "I am Admiral Jiho of the United Nations ship Endeavour, representing the people of Earth. We come in peace, seeking knowledge and friendship among the stars." Vrach's mandibles clicked together in what might have been laughter. "Earth, yes, we detected your crude drive activation. You are children playing with fire. This region belongs to the Dominion. You will return to your world and await our terms." "Terms?" Yuna asked, her diplomatic training kicking in. "We would be happy to discuss a treaty between our peoples." "There is no discussion," Vrach said coldly. "You will pay tribute. You will acknowledge Vortan supremacy. You will provide resources and technology. These are not negotiations. These are facts. You have 10 solar cycles to prepare for our arrival. We will come to your world and establish our authority." The transmission ended abruptly. The bridge was silent for a long moment. Then Captain Minho, commander of the destroyer UNS Defiant that accompanied them, appeared on screen from his ship. He was young, aggressive, and his face was red with anger. "Admiral, we can't let them talk to us like that." "We should stand down, Captain," Jiho said firmly. "We're outnumbered and outgunned. We came here to explore, not to fight." But his mind was already racing. 10 solar cycles, 10 days. Not much time. They returned to Earth immediately. The United Earth Council convened within hours. The chamber was filled with representatives from every nation, all arguing at once. "We must comply," said one delegate. "We've only just reached the stars." "We can't fight an interstellar empire." "And be slaves?" another shouted. "Never." Jiho sat quietly through the arguments, letting them exhaust themselves. Finally, the Secretary General called for silence and turned to him. "Admiral, you've met them. What do you recommend?" Jiho stood. "They underestimate us. They think we're primitives because our drive is crude, because we're new to space. But they don't know humanity's history. We've been preparing for this scenario for decades." It was true. After humanity had achieved global peace 50 years ago, the military-industrial complex hadn't disappeared. It had simply shifted focus. What if hostile aliens existed? What if first contact went wrong? Secret programs had continued, hidden in plain sight. Weapons research, ship design, war colleges teaching tactics for battles humanity hoped would never come. "They gave us 10 days, Jiho continued. "They expect us to panic, to surrender. Instead, we use that time. We mobilize everything. Every shipyard, every factory, every resource. We show them what humans do when threatened." "You're talking about war," someone said. "I'm talking about survival," Jiho replied. "And if they force our hand, we'll fight unlike anything they've ever seen." The vote was close, but it passed. Earth went into emergency production mode. Shipyards that had been building colony vessels and mining ships switched overnight to warships. The designs had been ready for years. waiting in classified databases. Destroyers, frigates, carriers, and massive dreadnoughts. Dr. Hana worked around the clock upgrading weapon systems. Railguns that could fire tungsten rods at incredible speeds. Missiles tipped with nuclear warheads. Point defense systems controlled by artificial intelligence. Technology the rest of the galaxy had abandoned as too dangerous or dishonorable. Yuna tried one more time to reach out to the Vortan Dominion, sending messages of peace. They were ignored. Commander Vrach had made his decision. Humanity would kneel or be destroyed. On the 10th day, Jiho stood once more on the bridge of the Endeavor. But now he commanded not one ship but 200. They hung in formation around Jupiter, waiting. New construction fresh from the yards. The crews were barely trained. The ships still smelled of welding and paint. But they were ready. The Vortan fleet arrived exactly on schedule. 50 massive dreadnoughts dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. They were beautiful in a terrible way, covered in weapons and armor that had conquered a dozen worlds. Commander Vrach's face appeared on every human ship's screen. You were warned. Submit now, or we will take your world by force. You have one final chance to— Commander Vrach, Jiho interrupted calmly. Before you continue, let me show you something. He gave a signal. All 200 human ships activated their active sensors at once, painting the Vortan fleet with targeting data. The alien sensors lit up with alarms as they suddenly realized they were surrounded. For every Vortan ship, there were 4 human vessels, positioned in a perfect sphere around them. Vrach's compound eyes widened in shock. Impossible. You had 10 days. You can't have— We've been preparing for you for 50 years, Jiho said quietly. You thought we were primitives. You thought we'd beg, but you made one mistake, Commander. You gave humanity a deadline, and when you give humans a deadline, we don't panic. We work. He leaned forward, his voice hard as steel. You have 60 seconds to leave our system. If you're still here when the time is up, we'll show you what human weapons can do. Choose wisely. The Vortan fleet hung in space, their commander frozen with indecision. The timer ticked down. 30 seconds, 20, 10. Vrach's mandibles clicked rapidly. Then he laughed, a harsh chittering sound. You dare threaten us? You who have never fought a space battle? We have conquered civilizations older than your species. We will swat you like insects. So be it, Jiho said. He cut the transmission and opened a fleet-wide channel. All ships, this is Admiral Jiho. They chose war. Show them why that was a mistake. Weapons free. 200 human warships opened fire at once. The void between Jupiter and its moons lit up like a newborn sun. Tungsten rods, each weighing several tons, accelerated to 30% of light speed. They hit the Vortan shields with the force of strategic nuclear weapons. Physics didn't care about honor or tradition. Kinetic energy was absolute. 3 Vortan dreadnoughts shattered in the first salvo. Their shields, designed to deflect energy weapons, did nothing against solid matter moving at relativistic speeds. Metal tore through metal. Atmosphere vented into space. Hundreds of Vortan crew members died before they could even process what was happening. Commander Vrach screamed orders from his flagship. Return fire! All weapons. The Vortan ships responded, their plasma cannons charging and releasing massive bolts of superheated matter. The attacks were impressive, beautiful even. Streams of blue and green energy crossed the darkness, but they were slow. Human ships, smaller and more agile, simply moved out of the way. What few plasma bolts connected splashed harmlessly against human shields designed specifically for energy attacks. They're too slow, Captain Minho shouted from the UNS Defiant. His destroyer was dancing between Vortan shots, its AI calculating trajectories faster than any living pilot could. Admiral, request permission to close range and engage directly. Denied, Jiho said firmly. Stick to the plan. All railgun-equipped vessels rotate firing patterns. Don't give them a chance to adapt. The human fleet moved like a pack of wolves, not a rigid formation. 40 ships would fire, then drift away while their railguns cooled and reloaded. Another 40 would take their place, maintaining constant pressure. The Vortan fleet, trained for honorable duels and set-piece battles, couldn't handle the chaos. On the carrier UNS Valkyrie, Captain Soman watched her displays with satisfaction. Launch all drones. Pattern Delta 7. 500 small craft erupted from the Valkyrie's bays. They weren't manned. Each drone carried a powerful AI and enough explosives to cripple a ship. The Vortan point defense systems opened fire, destroying dozens of drones, but for every one destroyed, 4 got through. The drones swarmed a Vortan dreadnought like angry hornets. They identified weak points, targeting gun emplacements, engine clusters, and sensor arrays. Explosions rippled across the alien vessel's hull. Within minutes, the mighty warship was dead in space, blind and helpless. Do-hyun sat in his control pod aboard the Valkyrie, his hands moving across haptic controls. Through his neural link, he saw through the eyes of 6 different drones. It was overwhelming at first, but his training held. He guided his drones through the maze of weapons fire, dancing between plasma bolts and missile contrails. "Target the command section," he muttered, selecting a Vortan ship. His drones obeyed instantly, forming up and diving toward the enemy vessel's bridge. The Vortan captain never saw it coming. The drones struck in perfect sequence, their shaped charges punching through armor and detonating inside. Across the battlefield, young pilots like Do-hyun were proving the worth of AI warfare. No human lives at risk but devastating effectiveness. It was a concept the galactic powers had banned centuries ago, calling it cowardly and dishonorable. Humanity didn't care about honor. They cared about winning. Commander Vrach watched his fleet dying around him. 20 ships destroyed, a dozen more crippled, and the humans had barely taken damage. 3 ships damaged, 1 destroyer limping back toward Earth. It was impossible. They were primitives. "All ships, close formation," he ordered. "We'll combine our firepower and overwhelm them." But as his remaining 37 ships drew together, Vrach realized his mistake. He had given the humans exactly what they wanted, a concentrated target. Now, Admiral Jiho said quietly, Engineer Tae-hyun had spent 3 sleepless days installing the experimental weapon system on 3 human ships. The Kasaba howitzer design was old, dating back to Earth's Cold War. But no one had ever built one for space combat. Until now, the 3 ships fired simultaneously. Nuclear warheads didn't explode in the traditional sense. Instead, shaped charges focused the blast into narrow beams of plasma and radiation, moving at nearly light speed. The concentrated nuclear fury struck the center of the Vortan formation. 7 dreadnoughts simply ceased to exist, vaporized in an instant. The blast wave tore through another 5 ships, crumpling their hulls like paper. The survivors scattered in panic, their formation destroyed, their morale shattered. "They're breaking," Yuna reported from her station, monitoring enemy communications. "Their command structure is collapsing. They're calling for retreat." Minho's face appeared on Jiho's screen. "Admiral, let me pursue." "We can destroy them all." "Negative," Jiho said. He felt tired suddenly, bone-weary. "Let them go, sir." Minho looked confused and angry. "We need them to run home and tell the story," Jiho explained. "If we destroy them all, the Vortan Dominion will think it was a fluke. They'll send another fleet, but if survivors return traumatized and defeated, word will spread. Sometimes mercy is more strategic than massacre." The Vortan survivors didn't need to be told twice. Their FTL drives spun up and they vanished into slip space, running for their lives. Of 50 ships that had arrived, only 12 escaped. All of them were damaged. The human fleet held position, weapons still hot, as they watched the last enemy vessel disappear. Then the cheering started. Ship to ship, crew to crew, the sound of victory echoed across communication channels. They had done it. Earth's first space battle, and they had won decisively. But Jiho didn't celebrate. He looked at the casualty reports. 127 dead. 3 ships damaged. Light losses by any military standard. But each number was a person, someone's son or daughter, parent or friend. Dr. Hana stood beside him reading the same reports. "We won," she said softly. "We survived," Jiho corrected. "But this isn't over. We've made an enemy today. The Vortan Dominion won't accept this defeat, and there are other powers out there watching." He was right to be concerned. Across the galaxy, 3 great civilizations had monitored the battle through long-range sensors. The Vortan Dominion, humiliated and furious. The Kelsh Empire, reptilian warriors who respected strength. The Thrain Collective, telepathic beings who calculated probabilities. They all reached the same conclusion. Humanity was a threat that would only grow more dangerous with time. In the Vortan capital, the War Council convened. Commander Vrach, his career in ruins, stood before them. They used dishonorable tactics, he said. Weapons banned by galactic convention. Artificial intelligence. Nuclear devices. Kinetic bombardment. They fight without honor, without rules. "Then we will fight them the same way," said the High Commander. "But we cannot do this alone. We must set aside our rivalries with the Keltian Thrain. For the first time in 800 years, the three powers must unite. Messages were sent. Secret meetings held. Ancient enemies sat down together, united by fear and anger. Within weeks, an agreement was reached. The Pact of Extinction, they called it. A promise to destroy humanity before it could spread. They would send not 50 ships, not 100, but 2,000. The largest armada ever assembled in galactic history. They would overwhelm humanity with pure numbers, crush Earth beneath their combined might. But they made one critical error. They assumed humanity would wait for them, that humans would stay in their home system and prepare defenses. They didn't understand human psychology. When threatened, humanity didn't just defend, they attacked. 6 months after the Battle of Sol, as the alien armada gathered at the edges of known space preparing their invasion, they received unexpected news. Human ships had been spotted deep in neutral territory, not defensive positions, but an aggressive fleet heading toward their staging area. The aliens were confused. Why would the humans come to them? It made no strategic sense. They had the advantage of defense, of fighting in their home system. Admiral Jiho stood on the bridge of the Endeavor, now flagship of a fleet 5 times larger than before. Earth's shipyards had worked without rest, producing a war machine the likes of which the galaxy had never seen. 500 warships, crews trained and ready, weapons loaded and tested. "Sir," said Hyun from the intelligence station, "long-range sensors confirm it. They're gathering at Calathon Prime, just as our informant said. 2,500 ships. Maybe more." "Good," Jiho said. "Then we know exactly where to hit them." "Admiral," Yuna said hesitantly, "they outnumber us 5 to 1. Shouldn't we reconsider?" Jiho smiled grimly. "The Hadrian Nebula is 3 days from their position. Dense gas clouds, sensor-blocking particles. Perfect for an ambush. We'll be there waiting when they move out." He opened a fleet-wide channel. "All ships, this is Admiral Jiho. We're going hunting." The Hadrian Nebula was beautiful and deadly. Clouds of gas stretched for millions of kilometers, glowing with the light of newborn stars. Cosmic dust particles made sensors nearly useless. Ships could pass within a few thousand kilometers of each other and never know it. Perfect for an ambush. Admiral Jiho's fleet had arrived, 3 days early, and spread out through the nebula in carefully planned positions. Each ship ran silent, emissions at minimum, waiting like predators in tall grass. 500 human vessels against 2,500 alien warships. The numbers were terrifying. But Jiho had chosen this battlefield for a reason. On the bridge of the Endeavor, the crew waited in tense silence. Every sensor was passive, just listening. They couldn't risk active scans that might give away their position. The aliens would come. Intelligence said they planned to move through the nebula on their way to human space. All Jiho's fleet had to do was wait. "Contact," Hyun whispered from his station. Multiple slipspace signatures at the nebula edge. "Hundreds of them." "Here we go," Jiho said softly. "All ships maintain silence. Wait for my signal." The alien armada entered the nebula in a massive formation. The Vortan ships led the way, their hulls now reinforced with heavier armor and new shields designed to stop kinetic weapons. Behind them came the Kelsh Empire's battlecruisers, sleek and deadly, armed with lance weapons that could cut through hull plating like hot knives through butter. At the rear, the Thrain Collective's hive ships drifted, organic vessels pulsing with psionic energy. War Marshal Threk commanded from his flagship at the center of the formation. He was Kelsh, a veteran of 200 battles across 50 years. He had studied the Battle of Sol carefully. The humans fought dirty, used banned weapons, ignored the ancient rules of warfare. But numbers were numbers. No amount of cleverness could overcome a 5 to 1 advantage. "Sensors report interference from the nebula," his tactical officer reported. "We're effectively blind beyond 10,000 kilometers. Maintain formation," Threk ordered. "Increase separation between ships. Deploy scout drones ahead." He wasn't worried. Even if humans were hiding in the nebula, his fleet was too large to ambush effectively. They would simply overwhelm any resistance. He couldn't have been more wrong. The first alien ships to die never even knew they were under attack. Human stealth corvettes coated in sensor-absorbing materials and running on minimal power drifted close to Vortan command vessels. At point-blank range, they fired quantum disruption torpedoes. Dr. Hana's newest creation didn't explode in the traditional sense. Instead, they destabilized matter at the subatomic level. The targeted ships simply came apart, their atoms losing cohesion. 50 Vorton command vessels disintegrated in the span of 30 seconds. Alarms screamed across the alien fleet. Threk stared at his display in disbelief. 50 ships gone, and they hadn't even seen the enemy. All ships combat formation. Find them. But finding an enemy in the Hadrian Nebula was nearly impossible. Human ships appeared from the gas clouds like ghosts, fired their weapons, and disappeared again before the aliens could respond. It wasn't a battle. It was a massacre. Arsenal ships, you're cleared to engage, Jiho ordered calmly. 20 massive human vessels emerged from hiding. They weren't fast or agile. They were mobile weapons platforms, each carrying over 1,000 missiles. They fired in sequence, creating a steel rain that darkened the sensors. Thousands of missiles streaked through the nebula. The alien point defense systems opened fire, destroying many. But there were too many. Missiles found their targets, nuclear warheads detonating in brilliant flashes. 200 alien ships were destroyed or crippled in the first minute of sustained bombardment. Captain Soman launched her drone swarms from the carrier Valkyrie. 5,000 AI-controlled fighters poured into the nebula like a swarm of angry insects. They used the dense gas as cover, appearing and vanishing, striking and retreating. Do-hyun controlled his 6 drones with practiced skill, guiding them through the chaos. The neural link made him feel like he was actually flying, dodging energy beams and missiles. His drones targeted a Kelsh battlecruiser, identifying weak points in its armor. They struck in perfect coordination, shaped charges punching through the hull and detonating inside. The enemy ship broke apart, secondary explosions tearing it to pieces. All across the nebula, young pilots like Do-hyun were doing the same. One human safely aboard a carrier could control 6 drones. That meant each carrier had the striking power of 3,000 fighters, with 0 risk to human life. The aliens, who had banned such warfare as dishonorable, had no counter-tactics. The Kelsh lance weapons proved useless. The cutting beams needed clear lines of sight and stationary targets. In the swirling gas clouds with human ships moving unpredictably, the lances rarely hit anything. When they did connect, human ships had multiple redundant systems. A single strike rarely destroyed them. The Thrain Collective attempted to use their psionic weapons, broadcasting waves of fear and despair meant to break human morale. But human crews wore neural dampeners, headsets that blocked telepathic intrusion. The Thrain's greatest weapon was nullified. War Marshal Threk tried to rally his forces, ordering them to consolidate and present a unified front. All ships converge on coordinate 779. We'll mass our firepower and break through. It was exactly what Jiho had been waiting for. 1,500 alien ships, panicked and desperate, converged on a single point in the nebula. They formed a tight ball of ships, overlapping shields and combining their firepower. It looked like a good defensive position, but it was a trap. Commodore Minho had been waiting for this moment. His battle group, 40 ships strong, had been playing the bait. They had deliberately let themselves be seen, drawing the enemy into pursuit. Now the aliens were clustered together, presenting one massive target. All ships with Kasaba howitzers. This is Admiral Jiho, the command came across the channel. Fire on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark. 50 human ships, positioned in a sphere around the alien concentration, fired simultaneously. Nuclear warheads didn't explode outward. Shaped charges focused the blasts inward, creating beams of nuclear fire that converged on a single point. The explosion was visible from 50 light-years away. The concentrated nuclear fury created a miniature star inside the nebula. 900 alien ships vaporized instantly. The shockwave caught another 300, crumpling their hulls or sending them spinning out of control. The nebula itself ignited, gases superheating and expanding in a massive chain reaction. When the light faded, only debris remained where 1,500 warships had been seconds before. The surviving alien forces broke completely. All semblance of formation vanished. Ships fled in every direction, trying desperately to escape the nebula. War Marshal Threk's flagship, damaged by the shockwave, tumbled through space. Minho's destroyer squadron found it and opened fire. Railgun rounds tore through weakened shields and punched into the hull. The great Kelsh warrior died without ever seeing the face of his enemy. The Kelsh and Thrain ships abandoned their Vorton allies and ran for the edges of the nebula. Human forces pursued, but Jiho ordered them to stop after a short chase. Let them go. They've learned their lesson. Of 2,500 ships that entered the Hadrian Nebula, only 312 escaped. Most were damaged, their crews traumatized. The Battle of Hadrian Nebula had lasted 12 hours. It was the most decisive military victory in recorded galactic history. But victory came with a price. 89 human ships had been destroyed in the fighting. 23,000 men and women would never return home. Jiho read every name, felt the weight of every loss. On the medical ship Hope, Nari worked to save wounded crew members brought in from damaged vessels. The sick bay was overwhelmed. Burns, radiation exposure, decompression injuries. She worked until her hands shook from exhaustion, then worked some more. These were her people, her responsibility. A young ensign died on her operating table despite everything she did. Nari wanted to scream, to cry, to rage at the unfairness. But there were more wounded waiting. She pushed her grief down and moved to the next patient. Across human-controlled space, the news spread. Earth erupted in celebration. They had won. Against impossible odds, humanity had defeated the combined might of 3 galactic empires. But in the fleet, the mood was more somber. They had won the battle, but at what cost? Jiho sent a single message back to the fleeing alien ships. It was broadcast on all frequencies in all known languages. This war is over. Return to your homes. Rebuild your fleets. But remember this day. Remember what happens when you threaten humanity. We don't fight for honor or glory. We fight to survive. And we will always, always fight harder than you expect. The message was received by civilizations across the galaxy. Minor powers that had been oppressed by the 3 empires celebrated. The old order was broken. A new age had begun. And at the center of it all was humanity. No longer the primitive newcomers, but a force to be respected and feared. The news of the Battle of Hadrian Nebula spread across the galaxy like wildfire. In the Vortan capital, chaos reigned. The High Commander had committed suicide in shame. 3 different factions fought for control of the government. The mighty dominion that had ruled for 10,000 years was tearing itself apart. The Kelsh Empire sealed its borders completely. No ships in, no ships out. Their warrior culture was in shock. How could they have been defeated so decisively? Some called for revenge. Others demanded peace before humanity destroyed them entirely. The Empire turned inward, wrestling with questions that had no easy answers. The Thrain Collective was more practical. Within a week of the battle, they sent ambassadors to Earth offering trade agreements, technology exchanges, and formal treaties. They had calculated the odds and realized resistance was futile. Better to ally with humanity than oppose them. But it was the smaller civilizations that reacted most dramatically. Worlds that had paid tribute to the 3 empires for centuries suddenly refused. Independence movements erupted across dozens of systems. The old galactic order was collapsing, and into the power vacuum stepped humanity. Admiral Jiho returned to Earth a hero. Parades were held in every major city. He was offered medals, promotions, political positions. He turned them all down except one, command of the new Earth Defense Fleet. Because despite the victory, Jiho knew the galaxy was still dangerous. Humanity needed to remain strong. On his first day back at headquarters, he met with the United Earth Council. The politicians were excited, drunk on victory and possibility. Admiral, we should establish colonies immediately. Claim territory while we can. Show the galaxy that humanity is here to stay. No, Jiho said firmly. We need to consolidate first. Build up our defenses. Help stabilize the systems that are breaking free from the empires. If we rush out and try to build an empire ourselves, we become what we just defeated. Yuna supported him. She had been appointed Earth's first galactic ambassador, a position that required her to navigate the complex politics of dozens of alien civilizations. The Admiral is right. Many species are watching us right now, waiting to see what kind of power we'll become. If we act like conquerors, we'll face another coalition against us. But if we act as liberators and defenders, we can build something better than the old order. It was a delicate balance. Humanity established the Commonwealth, a voluntary federation of free worlds. Any species could join, but none were forced to. The terms were simple: mutual defense, free trade, and respect for sovereignty. Within 6 months, 20 different civilizations had signed up. Within a year, 50. But building peace required more than treaties. It required ensuring humanity could defend itself and its allies. Minji took charge of fleet logistics. solving the complex problem of how to supply warships operating light years from Earth. She established supply depots, developed faster cargo ships, and created a network that could support operations anywhere in the region. Engineer Tai Hyun worked on the next generation of weapons. The Kasaba howitzers had worked, but they were too large and required too much power. He began developing smaller, more efficient versions that could be mounted on destroyers and frigates. His team also worked on defensive systems, better shields, improved armor, countermeasures against enemy weapons. Captain Soman established the Human Fleet Academy on Mars. She trained new officers and pilots, teaching them not just tactics and strategy, but also the responsibility that came with power. "We won because we were willing to do whatever it took to survive," she told her students. "But now we need to be wise enough to know when not to fight." Do-Yun and the other drone pilots became celebrities, though they didn't seek the attention. The Ghost Squadron, they called them. Young men and women who had killed thousands without ever being in personal danger. Some called them heroes. Others called them cowards. Do-Hyun didn't care what people called him. He had done his job and saved lives. Dr. Hana took a different path. The quantum disruption torpedoes had been devastatingly effective, but she was haunted by what she had created. 50 ships disintegrated, thousands of aliens dead in seconds. She retired from weapons development and began teaching at university, training the next generation of scientists. She often wondered if her weapons would be used again, and what that would mean for humanity's soul. Hyun formed the Human Intelligence Network, an organization dedicated to gathering information about potential threats. Never again would humanity be surprised. He recruited agents from dozens of species, built networks of informants, and monitored communications across 100 worlds. Knowledge was power, and Hyun made sure humanity knew what was happening in the galaxy. Commodore Minho received humanity's highest military honor for his actions during the battle. He was also formally reprimanded for disobeying orders multiple times. He didn't care about either. He had fought well, his crew had survived, and they had won. That was enough. He took command of a battle group stationed at the edge of Commonwealth space, watching for threats. 5 years after the Battle of Hadrian Nebula, the galaxy was unrecognizable. The Vorton Dominion had split into 3 separate states, constantly feuding. The Kelsh Empire remained isolated, though occasionally they sent observers to Commonwealth worlds. The Thrain Collective had become humanity's closest allies, trading their advanced biotechnology for human military protection. New species joined the Commonwealth every month. Most were former tributaries of the empires, grateful for their freedom. But some were entirely new contacts, civilizations on the far side of the galaxy that had heard stories of humanity and wanted to meet them. The treaty called the Compact of Coexistence was signed on a neutral world. Representatives from dozens of species agreed to new rules for the galaxy. No aggressive expansion, respect for sovereignty, peaceful resolution of disputes, and if conflicts did arise, the Commonwealth fleet would enforce the peace. Humans shared their technology, but carefully. Railgun designs were provided to allies. Missile systems were sold to Commonwealth members. But the quantum disruption torpedoes and Kasaba howitzers remained human-only weapons. Some secrets were too dangerous to share. Not everyone welcomed the new order. Pirate groups raided shipping lanes, attacking vulnerable cargo vessels. Remnant forces from the old empires occasionally struck at Commonwealth outposts. And in the dark spaces between stars, rumors spoke of ancient powers that had watched the war and were now deciding how to respond. Admiral Jiho stood on the observation deck of the new headquarters station, looking out at Earth below. The planet was thriving. New orbital stations, massive shipyards, defensive platforms. Humanity had built a fortress around its homeworld. But Jiho knew fortresses could become prisons if you weren't careful. Impressive, isn't it? Yuna joined him at the window. She looked tired. Diplomacy was exhausting work, dealing with dozens of alien cultures, each with their own customs and expectations. "We've come far in 5 years," Jiho agreed. "Sometimes I worry we've come too far too fast." Meaning? Meaning we went from one ship to the largest fleet in the galaxy in less than a decade. We went from unknown to feared across countless worlds. That kind of rapid change creates instability. Yuna nodded slowly. "I hear the whispers in diplomatic channels. Some species think we're too powerful. They're afraid we'll become the next empire, just with human faces instead of Vortan or Kelsh." "Are they wrong to be afraid?" Jiho asked quietly. It was the question that haunted him. Humanity had fought for survival, had won against impossible odds. But what now? They had power, influence, and allies. Would they use it wisely, or would they become the very thing they had fought against? I don't think so, Una said after a long pause. We're not perfect. We make mistakes. But we're trying to build something better than what came before. That has to count for something. Jiho hoped she was right. He looked at the stars, at the vast expanse of space that humanity now had access to. So much potential, so much danger, so many unknowns. A message chimed on his communicator. Priority alert from Hyun's intelligence network. Jiho read it quickly, his expression darkening. What is it? Yuna asked. Long-range probes detected something at the edge of known space. A fleet. Not Vortan, not Kelsh, not Thrain. Something else. Something old. How large? The probes were destroyed before they could get accurate counts. But Hyun's analysis suggests thousands of ships. Maybe tens of thousands. Yuna's face went pale. That's impossible. Where would they come from? I don't know, Jiho said. But I'm about to find out. He activated the fleet-wide emergency channel. All Commonwealth forces, this is Admiral Jiho. We have a potential threat at grid coordinates attached. I want reconnaissance in force. 5 battle groups, full loadout. We move in 6 hours. He looked back at Earth one more time. They had won peace through strength, had built something worth protecting. Now they had to prove they could defend it against whatever new threat was emerging from the darkness. The mystery fleet turned out to be nothing threatening. Ancient automated mining vessels abandoned thousands of years ago, reactivated by a computer glitch. They were salvaged and studied, providing valuable technology. But the incident reminded everyone that the galaxy still held many secrets. 10 years after the Battle of Hadrian Nebula, the Commonwealth had grown beyond anyone's imagination. 140 member worlds representing dozens of species. The human fleet patrolled vast territories, ensuring peace and protecting trade routes. Humanity had become what the old empires never managed. A true partnership of equals. Admiral Jiho was older now, gray showing in his hair. He had retired from active command 3 years ago, taking a position as advisor to the Fleet Academy. He spent his days teaching young officers, passing on the lessons learned from humanity's rapid rise to power. On a cool spring morning, he stood at a memorial on Earth, a simple stone monument, black granite polished to mirror smoothness. 23,000 names were carved into its surface. Every human who died in the Battle of Hadrian Nebula. Jiho came here often, remembering faces and voices now gone forever. A young cadet approached nervously. She wore the uniform of a Commonwealth officer, fresh from the academy. Her name tag read Ensign Park. She hesitated before speaking. Admiral Jiho, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to say thank you. My grandmother served on the UNS Endeavor. She always said you saved humanity. Jiho smiled sadly. What's your assignment, Ensign? The new Colony Protection Force, sir. We're heading out to the Andromeda sector, former Vortan territory. The Dominion doesn't exist anymore, Jiho reminded her. Just 3 smaller nations trying to rebuild? Yes, sir. But old habits die hard. Some of them still resent us, Jiho nodded. It was true. Not everyone had embraced the new order. There were groups who longed for the old days, when might made right and the strong dominated the weak. They saw humanity as disruptors who had ruined a perfectly good system. What did the Academy teach you about using force, Ensign? Jiho asked. That it should be the last option, sir. But when necessary, we use overwhelming power to end conflicts quickly and minimize casualties. Good. Remember that. We won the war because we were willing to fight without mercy when pushed. But we won the peace because we showed mercy when we didn't have to. He paused, looking at the memorial. Every name on this wall is someone who died so humanity could survive. Don't waste their sacrifice by becoming the bullies we fought against. No, sir. I won't, she saluted and walked away. Jiho watched her go, hoping the next generation would be wiser than his had been. They had been forced to fight for survival. The young people now had the luxury of building something better. Across the galaxy, the changes continued. The Vortan successor states were slowly democratizing, influenced by Commonwealth ideals. Young Vortan attended human universities, learning engineering and science. Some even joined the Commonwealth fleet, serving alongside the species their ancestors had tried to conquer. The Kelsh Empire finally opened its borders after a decade of isolation. They had undergone their own revolution, young warriors overthrowing the old guard. The new Kelsh government sought partnership with humanity, offering their warrior skills in exchange for technological advancement. The Thrain Collective continued to be humanity's closest allies. Their biotechnology combined with human engineering produced medical advances that saved millions of lives across the Commonwealth. Diseases that had plagued species for millennia were cured. Lifespans extended. It wasn't just military might that made humanity influential, but what they did with their power. Captain Soman, now Admiral Soman, commanded the Fleet Academy on Mars. She had trained thousands of officers. Each one taught the importance of restraint as much as aggression. Anyone can destroy, she told them. The real challenge is knowing when not to. Do-hyun had left the military and started a company making civilian drones for construction and exploration. The Go Squadron had been disbanded 5 years ago, no longer needed in a galaxy at relative peace. Sometimes he missed the adrenaline, the clarity of purpose that came in combat, but mostly he was glad those days were over. Dr. Hana published a memoir about the development of humanity's weapons. She didn't hide from what she had created, but she also questioned the morality of it all. The book became required reading at the Academy, sparking debates about the ethics of warfare that would continue for generations. Hyun's intelligence network had evolved into the Commonwealth Security Service, monitoring threats both external and internal. Pirates were tracked down. Terrorist groups were stopped before they could act. Information was shared freely among member worlds. Knowledge had indeed become power, but power used to protect rather than oppress. Commodore Minho, now Vice Admiral Minho, commanded the border fleets. He had mellowed with age, becoming more strategic and less impulsive. His aggressive tactics were still studied at the Academy, but so were his mistakes. He taught classes on decision-making under pressure, using his own experiences as both positive and negative examples. Yuna had become the Commonwealth's Secretary of External Affairs, essentially the chief diplomat for 140 worlds. She negotiated trade agreements, resolved disputes, and represented the Commonwealth in the new Galactic Council. It was exhausting work, but she loved it. Every day she helped build bridges between species that had been enemies for centuries. Minji had revolutionized military logistics, and then applied those same principles to civilian trade. The Commonwealth had the most efficient supply network in the galaxy, moving goods and resources faster and cheaper than anyone else. Economic prosperity followed, raising standards of living across member worlds. Tae-hyun continued developing new technologies, though his focus had shifted from weapons to propulsion systems. His latest project was a slip space drive twice as efficient as the original human design, making travel between stars faster and safer. Exploration was expanding rapidly, with new worlds being discovered every month. 50 years after the Battle of Hadrian Nebula, Admiral Jiho returned to the memorial one last time. He was old now, his body failing despite advanced medical care. He had lived a long life, seen humanity rise from primitive newcomers to galactic leaders. It was time to rest. A crowd had gathered at the memorial. Veterans, families of the fallen, current service members, and citizens from dozens of worlds. They had come to honor the old admiral on his final visit. Camera drones floated overhead, broadcasting across the Commonwealth. Jiho stood before the memorial, running his aged hand across the carved names. So many lives lost, but their sacrifice had not been in vain. Humanity had survived. More than that, they had thrived and helped others do the same. A young reporter called out, "Admiral Jiho, was it worth it? The cost, I mean. 23,000 dead. Was it worth the price?" The crowd went silent. It was the question everyone wondered, but few dared ask. Jiho turned to face them, his voice still strong despite his age. "When the Vortan came to our system, they demanded our surrender. They would have enslaved us, exploited our world, reduced humanity to servants of an empire that cared nothing for freedom or dignity. We said no, we fought. And yes, we paid a terrible price," he gestured at the memorial. "These 23,000 died so that billions could live free. They died so humanity would have a future among the stars. They died so we could build something better than what came before. But was it worth it?" the reporter pressed. Jiho looked at the crowd. Humans standing beside Vortan, Kelsh, Thrain, and dozens of other species. All equals, all free, all partners in building a better galaxy. They came to reduce us to dust, Jiho said quietly. Instead, we reduced empires to dust. We didn't want war. We wanted peace. But when forced to choose between slavery and fighting, we chose to fight. And we won. Not just for ourselves, but for everyone oppressed by the old order. He paused, gathering his thoughts. Yes, it was worth it. Every name on this wall represents someone who believed humanity deserved to be free. They were right. We're not the strongest species in the galaxy. We're not the smartest or the oldest. But we're the ones who refused to kneel. And that made all the difference. The crowd erupted in applause. Jiho smiled, feeling tired but content. He had done his duty. The next generation would carry humanity forward from here. As the sun set on Earth, casting long shadows across the memorial, Jiho said his final goodbye to those who fell so long ago. He had lived to see their sacrifice honored, their deaths given meaning by the world they had helped create. The galaxy had learned a lesson 50 years ago. When the first human fleet arrived at the Hadrian Nebula, entire armadas were reduced to dust. Not through magic or superior technology, but through determination, innovation, and the unwillingness to accept defeat. Humanity had been underestimated once. No one would make that mistake again. And in the 50 years since, humanity had proven that the real victory wasn't in destroying enemies, but in building alliances. The Commonwealth wasn't an empire. It was a partnership. The strength came not from forcing others to obey, but from inspiring them to join willingly. The age of empires was over. The age of cooperation had begun. And humanity, once primitive newcomers stumbling into galactic politics, now stood at the center of it all.